Welcome to a new podcast. This is Everything with Everett, a talk show podcast hosted by Everett McConnaughey from Boise, Idaho. The purpose of this production is to share thoughts, voices, and information to further a discussion on who we are as individuals, communities, and a global presence. Everything with Everett is open to all topics of discussion: faith, religion, history, finances, and well, everything. Follow, like, listen, and subscribe. Visit everettmcconaughey.com. Hey everybody, welcome back to Everything with Everett. This is video number 2 of this week. This section is In the Know, something a little bit less based on the news. Kind of a work in progress with the new format, changing it from one 30-minute segment to 2 15-minute segments with things that either relate or don't. This week, both episodes seem to kind of be connected. Earlier was about your rights to freedom of speech online, and today is the Communications Decency Act, Section 230 from 1996. This law basically set up internet companies so that they didn't have the responsibilities of newspapers, media outlets, TV stations, and radio stations. Kind of gave them some immunity, as it were. And there's definitely some good aspects to it. It was well-intentioned, I think, but also the internet was in its infancy for sure in 96 when that was written, and I think that it definitely needs to be modified. I think as it stands, it's kind of a lot of gray area. I definitely think there needs to be a level of immunity from internet companies from their users, but at the same time, I think that because they are gaining our personal information and being able to market that, and that is how they are making money, then I think that we're at a time where they've come up with profitable models to where they should have some accountability as to what they are putting out there. They should be actively enforcing and universally enforcing their standards. It's kind of odd that certain things get taken down immediately and other things seem to go until it's like, whoops, we missed that. So I definitely think that they should be able to be sued. I think that there should be some responsibility on that standpoint for the media outlets. I have a video from NBC News that I'd like to share that kind of explains the Communications Decency Act Section 230, and we'll get to that right after this sponsor. Podcasting isn't hard when you have the right partners. The team at Buzzsprout is passionate about helping you succeed. Buzzsprout gets your show listed on every major podcast platform. Join over 100,000 podcasters already using Buzzsprout to get their message out to the world. Click the link in the show notes and let Buzzsprout know Everett sent you. You'll get a $20 Amazon gift card if you sign up for a paid plan, and you'll help support this show.
It is a tiny law that's had a huge impact on the internet as we know it. Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act. Lawmakers on both sides of the aisle want to change the way the law works, affecting how content is moderated online. So what exactly is Section 230? NBC News' Jane Tim and David Ingram explain.
So Section 230 is the piece of law that says the websites aren't responsible for the content that's posted on there. So if I write something on Yelp, it's not Yelp's fault. But it does allow Yelp to moderate, to try and filter out profanity, to have a terms and service and try and create the community they want. when this law was written on the books in 1996, the idea was to give some sort of incentive for internet providers and websites and tech companies to have some rules of the road. But they weren't going to make them responsible for it, because previous law had actually said if you moderate your content, you're responsible for it. You're part of the creators. And this law was designed to essentially take the disincentive away. So Section 230 reads, all 26 words of it, no provider or user of an interactive computer service shall be treated as the publisher or speaker of any information provided by another information content provider. That's really dense, but basically it just says if I write something on the internet, it's my fault, not the person whose website I'm writing on. Now, that was perceived by many courts to essentially take all responsibility away from tech companies for what's on the internet. And that's created the internet as we know it, a bastion of free speech, consumer reviews, blogs, websites, everything. Now, a growing number of lawmakers have zeroed in on this little piece of law, this 26 words, as something they want to go after. Democrats want tighter restrictions on the internet, more regulation on the content that is going out there. They say it's something that has created violence on the internet, that people are becoming radicalized on the internet. Now, Republicans have zeroed in on a different part of the law. The part of the law that says that you can moderate the content and you're still not responsible for it. That moderation, they don't like that. And they think that tech companies are moderating against them and that the internet is biased against conservatives. There's a really pervasive myth about Section 230, and that's that it requires neutrality. To hear Washington, D.C. and a bunch of Republican politicians talk about it, the law essentially requires neutrality and therefore gives protections to tech companies who aren't biased. One of the early preambles of the law talks about the diversity of ideas, but nothing in the law requires neutrality. It doesn't actually say you have to be neutral. It simply says you can make your own rules for the web, and that's fine. Now, some Democrats want more moderation and more regulation of content on the internet. Presidential candidate Beto O'Rourke has proposed changing some of these regulations for companies that he says don't crack down on hate speech and violence and radicalization online. My colleague David Ingram and I actually talked to a lot of different experts, industry leaders, one of the Republicans who wrote the law years ago, who's since retired from Congress, and people said, you know, you're talking about how you want to change this, how you want to use this as a bargaining chip to try and get something out of tech companies who have a whole lot of power, but no one seems to have any good solutions. One of the proposed solutions by Senator Josh Hawley would actually put the FTC in charge of the internet, in charge of overseeing the internet's moderation and neutrality. That would overwhelm federal resources, a lot of people told us. And how is the FTC going to review everything on the internet? Part of the reason that the power was put in the hands of the tech companies is that the government doesn't have the ability or the manpower to review everything on the internet. The tech companies are the ones who have the best shot at trying to review some of this. Some experts actually said if you got rid of Section 230, you'd have sort of two polar opposites. You either have an incredibly moderated internet that sort of looked more like a magazine, or you'd have a internet with no rules at all that would look more like 8chan, and there'd be a lot of nudity, profanity, violence. Tech companies, unsurprisingly, quite like Section 230. It gives them a lot of power and a lot of freedom. But one of the things that experts told us is that if you got rid of Section 230 and user-generated content stopped being something that was not a huge liability to publish, it would completely upend the business models of things like Twitter, Facebook, YouTube that depend on user-generated content. Now, lawmakers on both sides of the aisle have gotten much more interested in how the law regulates the internet in recent years, but it really depends on what the actual law will say. So 26 words from 1996 may not be the most savvy, but they are the law of the land now. And until we see actual proposals, experts say it's just too much to know what the internet would look like under a new set of regulations.
So definitely some interesting thoughts to think about. You could definitely break the internet by removing 230, but I don't know. I see why it's a beneficial thing, but I also see some negative from it. I can see why, I did ask some conservative friends, what are your thoughts? And they said that it needed to be repealed. It sounds like they would like it to be completely gone. But that could, shut down the internet as we know it and the ability for us as general users, if we're not paying for a server platform, we kind of would lose that that ability, like social media, Facebook, Twitter, and all that jazz. But I also think that, like I said earlier, they are profiting on our generated, provided stuff, even to the point where now, like, they're looking at our credit card spending is being sent to social media outlets, and they're using it for ad targeting. And there's such a revenue stream that either our rights as citizens need to be applied to the internet, and then we can leave 230 the way it is. So we all have the right to free speech and, whatever, and with the right to privacy. But I also think that if that's not likely going to happen, because that's kind of hard to do, and provide information while also making sure that it's all secure, like that would bog down the internet unbelievably so. But I also think that there should be ability for people to sue these tech companies. I think that there should be responsibility. I think that they should have to prove that they're enforcing their guidelines. And, letting something fester for 4 years until finally, all these like crazy things about taking back the government and attacking the Capitol building suddenly became a reality a few weeks ago on January 6th, because people showed up, listened to the president talk, and he said, "You're going to go to the Capitol and we're going to take back our government." And what did they do? They went to the Capitol building, they smashed the windows. They tried to overthrow our government. Republicans did that. And I think that there's a fine line between freedom of speech and mounting into a treason situation or radicalizing people, what created ISIS and all those terror organizations. And I think that social media outlets have a responsibility to humanity, to facts. And I think that waiting until the 11th hour to decide, hey, this is a little bit radical, let's take down the president, let's take down, these things. They had already been hearing it for 4+ years. So silencing it now in the last, 2 weeks of an administration after things had gone south is just too late. And I think there's some responsibility on the hands of Facebook and Twitter. The adding the flags and stuff helped, but again, it didn't start soon enough. It didn't stop this psychotic degradation of facts and information from getting out there, And I think that it should be vetted. If someone's, posting videos that claim that Trump said this stuff and it's actually not true, like a legitimate news source can't verify, can't show that actually is what took place, then it should be taken down. YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, they should all strip that stuff down as false information, false content. And they should do it quickly so that it saves our humanity, saves our race, saves our country, and hopefully our world. So that was a kind of a gloss over version of the Communications Decency Act, section number 230 from 1996. Hope you enjoyed this week's episodes, freedom of speech and the Decency Act. I hope you enjoyed the 250-minute segments instead of 130 segment. I feel like I didn't ramble as much. Still quite a bit of time to talk, so that's good. If you have any thoughts or questions about this, you can text or call 208-391-2808. Have a good week. Thank you for listening. Join the conversation. Send a text message or leave a voicemail at 208-391-2808. Be sure to like, follow, and subscribe Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and several podcasting platforms. All the information at everettmcconaughey.com. Hey YouTube, thanks for watching. Was that a thumbs up? Please be sure to like and subscribe. Also, click the notification bell so you don't miss any future videos. You can find out more about my Facebook page, Twitter account, and podcast at everettmcconaughey.com. Also, if you have any comments on today's episode, go ahead and leave it in the comments discussion down below, or you can call or text 208-391-2808. Thanks.